First of all, I think it's really, really good news. It sort of illustrates one of the challenges that us military people and politicians have. Politicians always like to make decisions at absolutely the last minute. But from a military perspective, you want decisions as early as possible. And when it comes to these long-range missiles, ATACMS and Storm Shadow, which were originally gifted to Ukraine sort of 12 months ago, but were so tightly restricted that they could only be used on certain targets. In effect, Russia has had 12 months to plan for the possibility that they'd be able to be used in Russia. So that is a bit of a downer. But having said that, it is hugely significant.
I think the first thing to say is that nobody predicted, including me, that Biden would appear to have allowed Zelensky to use ATACMS against Russia, whether it's because of the very many missile strikes Putin has carried out over the whole of Ukraine since the election of Donald Trump, or whether it is specifically tied to the presence of North Korean troops in the enclave. We don't know. So nobody predicted it. It has happened. The question now is, what was the intention behind Biden's measure? How many ATACMS has he given Zelensky? And what are the conditions attached, if any?
In terms of changing the narrative of this, it will not lead to a punch. Obviously, it's to be welcomed, though, as the next step. But why are we doing this so piecemeal? Why are we coming to this always behind the curve, always allowing Russia to make the first move? I mean, it's interesting that the idea that this is now palatable has taken place because North Korean troops are on the ground. But we knew this was coming. The North Koreans were coming for some time. We knew that they were heading that way, and we've waited this late to help the Ukrainians. It's a very sad situation that it's come down to this level of, frankly, ineptitude on the part of the West to fight a war that could have been, won a long time ago.
Lots of people are betting that Ukraine's got about 6 weeks to get into a good position. If President Trump, when he comes in on the 20th of January next year, tries to enforce a ceasefire, then Ukraine needs to be in as good a position as possible. Now, what these ATACMS and Storm Shadow do means that Ukraine can now attack key Russian forces and sites up to about 400 kilometers into Russia. Now, we've discussed before, to me, the Kursk area is the vital ground. Russia has amassed 50,000 troops to attack into it, including up to 10,000 North Koreans. So it shows that they are almost throwing everything into it, because I think whoever holds Kursk come Christmas will be on the front foot. What we also know is that Storm Shadow and ATACMS, not only are they very precise, very capable missiles, but the Russians seem unable to interdict them, to shoot them down. A lot of that is because the Russians have moved a lot of air defense assets away from the front line to protect Putin's palaces and Russian cities. So again, that will create confusion and make Russian leaders have to make decisions.
In any kind of military situation, what you're looking at is stopping the other side from being able to, firstly, reach the front line, and secondly, fight effectively if they do reach the front line. So we're talking about knocking out transport infrastructure to show they can't actually get there. We're looking at targeting forces a lot further away from the front line. On their way to the front line, we're looking at bases being hit as well. And crucially, air power being nullified by the ability to strike, kind of places where the planes are taking off from. So there's a whole set of things you're looking at further away from the front line that directly impact on Russia's ability to supply the front line, and that could also be not simply in terms of men, but it might also be in terms of material and supplies and all the other things you need to keep an army going, as well as trying to make a dent in Russia's fighting capabilities.
And the crucial thing is, with the great buildup of troops in Kursk, including 10,000 or so North Koreans. It shows that Putin's almost throwing all his cards on the table to regain Kursk, which is vital Russian ground, but actually with Storm Shadow and ATACMS, Ukraine's in a much better position to hold it and perhaps make grounds elsewhere. I think there is a lot of chatter coming out of Russia that this could escalate to tactical nuclear weapons. I personally believe that it's the opposite, because Russian tactical nuclear weapons have a maximum range of about 400 miles. In order to attack Ukraine infrastructure and cities that seem to be the targets, they'd have to move them right to the border of Ukraine. And it's clear that British and American intelligence follows them very closely, and the Ukrainians themselves can take out the aircraft and launchers long before they'd be able to fire. So overall, it is very welcome. Had it been done 6 or 12 months ago, we might not be in this position now. But let's hope it'll also encourage the Germans to donate their Taurus missiles that are similar, the French to unlock their Scalp missiles that are similar. And I assume that our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has done exactly the same. Any prevarication or delay on his point would be really unfortunate.
The point of this is that it enables the Ukrainians to hit the Russians further back. It enables them to then start moving, if you like, the direction of travel when it comes to the military, equation here, and push the Russians to the back foot, knowing they cannot just sit outside the front line and then just feed troops in and others to do that. They're now targets everywhere, the Russians, and that's going to make a big difference to how the next stage of this war is going to be fought in the Kursk region, where don't forget the Russians have a 50,000 strong force waiting to go on the major offensive, and this will give pause for thought as to how they might be able to do that.
It's a very problematic, very difficult situation. I do not believe that the ATACMS are game changers. As I say, I don't think they will hit Russia in areas where Russia is not expecting it. It won't hit sites that are not directly connected to the fighting that is going on at the moment. They won't take out Moscow, for example, or another major city. That couldn't happen. And at the back of my mind, there is a feeling, in a way, that in tactical terms, at any rate, Putin has made a miscalculation, that it was a foolish move by Putin, probably indicating an element of desperation to carry out these massive attacks. When you look at the map of Ukraine, past few days, where these Russian missiles and drones have hit, it is the whole of the country. And he's trying to take out the energy in particular, with the aim, of course, of freezing the Ukrainian people to death, softening them up. So it is a complicated picture, because it is not entirely clear exactly what is going on, and it's not entirely clear that it will make any significant change now. And is it enough? It may well be too little, and certainly it is too late. Biden thinks he'll go out, in a role of a glory. I'm sorry, that's not true. He has been a disaster for Ukraine, as he has been a disaster for the Middle East. And it's not strength he's displayed, but weakness.
I think a lot of this is just Russian hot air. I mean, really, since day one, Putin and his close aides have been threatening nuclear strike if we escalated. And tomorrow is the 1,000th day of this conflict, and it hasn't happened. So I think Western leaders have got to be really bold. Both ATACMS and Storm Shadow have already been used to attack targets in Russia, and we see no escalation. I would like to go further. I can see no reason why British and American jets are knocking down Iranian missiles and drones fired at Israeli cities, but they're not knocking down Russian missiles and drones fired at Ukrainian cities. And it is much more likely that if Ukraine goes wrong, British troops will have to fight the Russians on the ground than anything that happens in the Middle East. So, yeah, it should embolden our leaders, who must now realize, and President Biden is showing the way, that actually Putin's threats are completely hollow. And now is the time, with the Russian boxer on the ropes, that we enable the Ukrainians to absolutely put in the killer punch and be in a really good position for the expected ceasefire sometime early next year.
Well, I think it will be threats, but if Putin decides to up the ante, I think we should say to him, even at this late stage, okay, bring it on. We're ready for it. We've got 2 months. We're ready for this. You bring it on. He's not going to use nuclear weapons because that would destroy his own people. He's not going to do it. But, you know, maybe he's going to use more thermobaric missiles, more North Koreans, more Iranian drones, and so on. All of that is possible. Putin's intention, unlike that of Biden, is clear, as is Trump. Maybe we have a word about Trump's intentions here. Biden has been the unclear one. Biden has been the one speaking in two voices at the same time. Putin has been very clear. His aim is to recreate the geopolitical entity of the Soviet Union.
Zelensky and his team have been talking about this for a long time. So one assumes that they already have their target sets, in other words, where they want to target. And they've already talked about using them to target airfields, launch sites for missiles, command and control headquarters. Last week, we discussed the issue that Zelensky was saying that he wanted to develop a nuclear capability so he could do this. Now, that has really put on the back burner. So one would expect him to put all his time and effort into making sure that these critical weapons are targeted at the right place. But absolutely, it'll be, I'm sure, to hold Kursk to begin with, and then where he can and where they're really struggling down in the Donbass, to take out some of the command and control nodes, the airfields in Crimea. Crimea is fully in range now, that are supporting those operations. We may even see the Ukrainians try and drop the Kursk bridge, although militarily that is not a significant target. Certainly politically it would be. And psychology plays such a part in warfare. And the key thing is to get on the front foot. And I'm sure that is exactly what Zelensky and his team, and they've shown to be very canny and very able people at fighting. And this is a key part of the armory they've been asking for, and let's now see them use it to great effect. The fact that the Russians have been so vehement in their verbal attacks against the West to prevent this happening, you sort of get the feeling that this is pretty significant. And it's essential that absolutely over the next 6 weeks, they get all they need. And if there are any Storm Shadow missiles left on the shelves in the UK, I hope they're on their way to Ukraine at this very moment.
I mean, the Ukrainians have, of course, been striking Crimea already, but not with these sorts of missiles. It's been drone attacks, things like that. So the idea would be, yes, the next stage surely is you just lift all the restrictions and say, off you go, fighting that way. But the trouble is, there's a clock running, isn't there? The clock is the Biden administration's time is running out. We're 2 months away from the transfer of power. It would seem, very unlikely we're going to get much more of a relaxation at this moment in time, given there's only 2 months, and given the fact that obviously the new administration does not seem to be making the same mood music